Sir Arthur Conan Doyle once said, "The world is full of obvious things which nobody by any chance ever observes." Violent Vice contains graphic and explicit content which may not be suitable for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, guys. Welcome to Violent Vice. I'm Audie.
And I'm John. Hello.
Hello. If you guys could do us a huge favor, give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, wherever you listen to, that would be really great. And hit that subscribe button. We'd really, really appreciate it. If you guys do have any spooky stories or creepy tales or even true crime stories and want us to share it on air, you can email us at violentvice@gmail.com.
Or on Facebook as well with I think it's still Violent Vice Podcast. So, but I mean, if you don't want to go completely creepy and just weird, I'm okay with that. The creepy stuff gets me all worked up. So, do that if you want, but know that you're causing me suffering.
It's okay. It's all good and fun. Now, on today's topic, Jack the Ripper continued. I'm going to just give a quick little refresher of where we left off.
Okay.
So far, Jack the Ripper's 5 canonical victims are Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, and Elizabeth Stride. And Elizabeth Stride was murdered on September 30th. And we are going to talk about Catherine Eddowes, who was also murdered on the same day by the same person. Ooh.
Uh-oh. Double whammy.
Double whammy. So, to get into it, Catherine Eddowes, also known as Kate Conaway, Kate Kelley for her different husbands, was born in Graceley Green, Wolverhampton on the 14th of April, 1842. Her parents were tin-plate worker George Eddowes and his wife Catherine Evans. The family moved to London a year after she was born, and she had 10 siblings.
That's a lot.
It is a lot, and I thought we had a big family.
Oh. Proven wrong once again.
Yup.
Oh, my.
At age 15, in the year 1857, both of Eddowes' parents had died, and this resulted in Eddowes and her siblings being admitted to an orphanage in Bermondsey Workhouse.
Ooh.
Yeah, a little bit of a rough upbringing there.
10 kids all at once for an orphanage. I'd say that's like the opposite of generous donation. It's like the opposite.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's still a lot of kids all at once.
It is. She later returned to Wolverhampton, where an aunt had obtained her employment as a tinplate stamper in the old hall works. Eddowes was soon fired from this employment, however, from having been caught stealing. Yeah, not the nicest thing. She also relocated from Wolverhampton to Birmingham, where she briefly lived with an uncle. So at least she has a supportive family.
Yeah, I mean, like, granted they didn't take her in, but then, I mean, if they took her in, there would be favoritism. There'd be 10 of them. Like I said before, that's a lot. But at least they were helping where they could.
Yeah.
So, okay, I can see it.
Yeah. And then Eddowes worked as a tray polisher in Birmingham for 4 months until she then returned again to Wolverhampton. And 9 months later, she went back to Birmingham. So she kind of moved back and forth between these two towns for a little over a year.
Well, I'm sure she made friends in both towns, so that should help.
Yep. Speaking of friends, while she resided in Birmingham, she began a relationship with a former soldier named Thomas Conaway, with whom she had two children with.
Were they married?
We are going to get to that.
Oh, kids first, then marriage. Okay.
Kids first.
Okay.
At one stage in the relationship, Eddowes actually had gotten a tattoo with the initials of her common law husband, TC, inscribed in blue ink on her left forearm. So they were a common law marriage, meaning that they lived together for a certain amount of time. They didn't actually have like a formal ceremony.
Okay, it's more just like, sort of like if we these days just go to the courthouse, get it done, and then now we're official
I
type
think
thing.
not even that. I think you like literally can just live together for a certain amount of years and then be accepted by the government as common law. I just know that common law divorces are a lot worse than actual marriages.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
I don't know.
At least that's how it works in the States.
Okay.
So at this time, Eddowes was about 5 feet tall. She had dark auburn hair and hazel eyes. Friends described her as a very jolly woman, always singing, very intelligent and scholarly, but possessed a fierce temper.
So she got the brown hair,
Yep.
but she was nice, but but also angry.
Nice, but a quick temper. Like, nice disposition, just got angry easy.
Okay, that's sort
Um,
of a little contradictory there, because I usually think of nice people being like on the peaceful side, but I guess like friendly and fierce.
Friendly, you just don't want to get on the wrong side of her.
Okie doke.
Yep. She was also short, too, like all the other ones.
Oh,
Five
well,
feet.
I'm short.
So am
You're
I.
short. So, normal.
Yes. Normal for us.
Yeah.
In 1868, Eddowes and Conway relocated to London, taking lodgings in Westminster,
Oh.
and they had a third child there. While in
Oh.
London, Eddowes took to drinking. She left her family in 1880, and to avoid contact with Eddowes, Thomas Conway drew his army pension under an assumed name of Quinn, and then also kept their son's addresses a secret from Catherine Eddowes, just so that she wouldn't be able to keep in contact.
So, they moved. She started drinking. He hid the family.
She left, then he hid the family.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
By the following year, she was living with a new partner named John Kelley at Cooney's Common Lodging House at 55 Flower and Dean Street, Spitalfields, at the center of London's most notorious criminal slum. So, kind of around, although I was looking at it on a map, it's kind of around Whitechapel area, but just off to the side more.
So, like, similar setting, but not the exact same spot.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm piecing it together.
Yep. During this time, she took to casual sex work to help pay for the rent. The morning before her murders, the 29th of September, and the Keddos and Ellie met in the early afternoon. And Eddowes told Kelley that she would go to Bermondsey to try to get some money from her daughter Annie, who is married to a gun maker in Southwark. So, from the sounds of it, Catherine kind of used and abused the family, and
Hmm.
this is just what I'm picking up from her common law husband hiding the family, hiding addresses, all that stuff. At least that's the picture that I got.
Okay. So, sort of more like she had a vague idea of where they might be, and from what she's heard, and essentially just went to them
For money,
to get
always.
stuff.
Yep, for
Okay.
drinking.
Okie doke.
A little bit of a toxic personality.
A little.
With money from pawning his boots, Kelley took a bed at the lodging house just after 8 p.m., and according to the deputy keeper, so like the person that runs the lodging house, he remained there
Mm.
all night.
Okay.
At 8:30 p.m. that same night, Saturday, the 29th of September, Eddowes was found lying drunk in the road on Aldgate High Street by police constable Lewis Robinson. She was then taken into custody to the Bishopgate police station where she was detained, and she gave the name, quote unquote, nothing until she was sober enough to leave at 1 in the morning on the morning of September 30th.
Hmm. Doesn't say much about her self esteem.
No. Upon leaving the station, instead of taking a right that would take her to the shortest home in Flower and Dean Street, Eddowes turned left to the general direction of Aldgate. She was last seen alive at 1:35 a.m. by three witnesses: Joseph Laudenday, Joseph Haim Levy, and Harry Harris, who themselves had just left a club on Duke Street after drinking. She was standing.
So, two Joes and a Harry.
Yep, two Joes and a Harry.
That kind of sounds like a country folk band.
It does, doesn't it? They saw her standing and talking with a man at the entrance of a church passageway, which led southwest from Duke Street to Mitre Square along the south wall of Great Synagogue of London.
So, two Joes and a Harry saw her, and they started going through, and she started going through this area.
Yep, a church passage which led from a single street to a square, so like a more open space along the south wall of the Great Synagogue of London.
Okay. For some reason, I thought it was like inside the synagogue. I'm just like, why is there a
Oh, no,
street going through a temple?
just along the wall of one.
Okay. It's just sightseeing type thing.
Yep.
Okay.
Only Londe could fully describe the man, whom he described as a fair mustached man wearing a navy jacket, a peaked cloth cap, and a red scarf. Chief Inspector Donald Swanson had stated in his report that he was doubtful of the description. He wrote that Londe had said some of the clothing of the deceased and recounted that the woman, when they found the body, was not wearing exactly that clothing.
Hmm. Well, they did just like leave a club,
They
so they
did.
probably weren't the most sober of people.
Yep. A patrolling policeman at the time, Police Constable James Harvey, walked down the church passageway from Duke Street very shortly afterwards, but his route took him back down that church passage to Duke Street without entering the square, so he did not see anyone.
Hmm.
At 1:30 a.m., Police Constable Watkins of the City Police passed the southwest-east corner on his route that brought him through the Mitre Square every 12 to 14 minutes. He had his lantern fixed to his belt, and he had left the square and turned right towards Aldgate. 5 minutes later, the three Jewish gentlemen, Harry Harris, Joseph Haim Levy, and Joseph Londe, had left the club and walked past. So, like, there is a good amount of time. Not like huge, not like hours, but
Yeah.
like 15 to 20 minutes where
Hmm.
that square is empty.
Okay.
The woman had her back to them, but they could see that her hand was wrestling against the man's chest. Levy was immediately convinced that the couple were up to no good and announced briskly, "I don't like going home by myself when I see these sorts of characters about."
Like, was she referring to the three guys or the supposed killer?
Oh, Levy, sorry to clarify, I know this is a little jumbled. Levy was one of the three guys that was walking, but they had split off at this time. And he says, "I
Oh,
don't like
okay.
going home by myself when people are having sex in the middle of the street or doing whatnot."
Okay. Well, that's fair.
Yep. In a hurry to get away, he didn't really pay the couple much attention, although he did say that the man had been 3 or so inches taller than the woman, so 5'3". Joseph Lunde, however, was a little less disgusted and kind of observed more. Although he hadn't seen the woman's face, he was almost certain that her clothing that she had on was the same as Catherine Eddowes, a woman that he did know. And he confirmed this when he was later showed this in the police station.
Hmm. So he's seen her before or knew her in
Knew
that
of
sort of way?
her. Yeah.
Okay.
Although the street lighting wasn't really good that night, he did catch a glimpse of the man's face, and he was able to provide the police with a description. He had the appearance of a sailor and was about 30 years or so. And he did say at the time he was about 5'9" tall and of medium build. He had fair complexion and a small, fair mustache. He sported a reddish handkerchief tied in a knot, wore a pepper salt colored loose fitting jacket, and had on gray peaked cloth cap. However, it should be noted that Londe also obtained a quick glimpse of the man as he passed by, since the couple were doing nothing particularly suspicious, and he
Hmm.
later maintained that he would not be able to recognize nor identify the man were he to see them again. So, out of the three descriptions, I do want to point out they all have a height difference, but the red scarf is the same.
Okay. And I mean, they were coming from a club and drunk, so they probably like depth perception isn't the greatest, but they could tell the color, so that would make the most sense.
Yep. So, 15 minutes from when the men had walked by, Catherine's body was discovered in Mitre Square, just a few steps away from where they saw the couple.
Oh.
And it was highly likely that the man that they saw with Catherine Eddowes was Jack the Ripper, the man who killed her.
Hmm.
And that also makes it likely that Londe did see the face of Jack. So, even though he
So
wouldn't be able to
he's
recognize him, he did actually see the face.
okay.
I do have to say, throughout all these cases, the ones we talked about last episode and this, Jack the Ripper has been seen a lot with his victims.
Yeah, but like nothing like blatantly said. And I mean, if he's a dude that has any sort of like disguise kit, sort of like Sherlock Holmes with like that fake nose type thing,
Mm-hmm.
I probably I would imagine that he would have something like that. So, because he's out in public all the time, and if he
Yep.
doesn't want to get caught, he probably would do that. So maybe he would shave one day and then not shave at all for like a week, so he'd have like a different complexion.
That's true.
Because he doesn't seem stupid. I don't know. Hard to tell, but with the amount of people that see him and he still gets away, I'd have to assume it's something like something along those lines where he does some sort of thing to disguise himself.
Yes. And then I bet he's also probably a recluse too, where like he doesn't know a whole lot of people and then it only comes out when he needs to kill,
Yeah,
you know?
that seems a bit more likely as well. But still, I wouldn't call him stupid.
No. Oh, no.
So
Not by any means. Just
if
maybe a
somebody
bit
saw him the first time, he probably wouldn't look the same the second.
true. But I would say he is reckless with the amount of times he has been seen.
Exactly.
Yep.
So I'm guessing he had to compensate that for something.
Yep. At 1:44 a.m., Police Constable Watkins turned out of Leadenhall Street and strolled towards Mitre Street and then veered right into Mitre Square. Almost immediately, he saw a sight that sent him reeling back in horror. Catherine Eddowes was lying on her back in a pool of blood, with her clothes thrown up over her waist. Racing across the street, Police Constable Watkins burst into Clearly in Tongue's warehouse, where he knew a retired policeman there, George Morse, who was working as the night watchman. He stated, "For God's sake, man, come to my assistance. There is another woman cut to pieces." Pausing to get his lamp, the night watchman then followed Watkins into the square's mouth, southwest of his current corner, took one look at the body, and raced off along Mitre Street towards Aldgate, blowing his whistle furiously, and he whistled as he ran.
So sort of like with every step there was like a little like burst.
Yep, like
So, so like essentially a foot patrolling police siren.
yep. Well, that's how they did it back then. You had
Yeah,
whistles.
but like I'm trying like it's probably the most old fashioned kind of police siren. It's just like tweet, 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 tweet. I'm sure a lot of people were woken up by that
Yeah.
because this was still like really early morning, right?
Yep, still really early morning.
Okay.
In Elgate, he met Police Constable James Harvey and Police Constable Holland and brought them back to the square. Holland went immediately to fetch Dr. George William Secura from his abode on nearby Jewelry Street. Secura was at the scene by 1:55 a.m. and later told the inquest that the place where the murder had occurred was probably the darkest part of Mitre Square, although there had certainly been enough light for the miscreant to do the deed. Death, he said, would have been instantaneous once the murderer had cut the windpipe and the blood vessels. Significantly, it was his opinion that the murder possessed not really great anatomical skill, which was contradicting to a lot of what was previously stated about Jack the Ripper.
Mm.
just that he only had basic knowledge of the anatomy. And when he was asked by the coroner if he would expect the murderer to be spattered with blood, he replied, "Not really." And this is because he's known to have like choked the victim before he cut their windpipe, and this is to prevent like blood spatter and whatnot.
I did
Like,
not know that.
yep. So with all the scarves and everything that we talked about in the previous victims that kind of held their heads on, it was
Yeah.
known that, and we talked about this with the last coroner scene, that he would pull like the scarf back or whatnot to bring the woman to her knees and then slash the windpipe, so kind of choking her, getting blood out of the area so that it wouldn't be quite as messy.
Hmm. Still, like, the blood would probably still pool, but it wouldn't just be like splatter.
Yeah.
Okay. Ah. Ah. Mm. Not.
So, yeah.
I don't know
So,
how I feel about that.
yeah. It's interesting. At the time, Secura did little but more than pronounce the life deceased and told everyone not to touch the body, preferring instead to wait for the arrival of the city police divisional surgeon, Dr. Frederick Gordon Brown, just to get, a second opinion and so that someone else would be knowledgeable of that scene.
And, I mean, they did make a pretty big mistake their first time with cleaning everything up before anyone got there, so they
Yep.
might have been learning from past mistakes. And yeah, second opinions, always get them.
Yep. Meanwhile, police officers were converging on Mitre Square from all over the city. Inspector Edward Collard arrived from Bishop Police Station and ordered an immediate search of the neighborhood, instructing that door-to-door inquiries were to be made in that area around Mitre Square. Next on the scene was Superintendent James McMillan, head of the City Police Detective Department, who arrived with a number of detectives, all of whom he sent off to do a search of the Spitalfield streets and lodging houses. As the officers began to fan out through the streets, several men were stopped and questioned, but to no avail. The killer, it appeared, had simply melted away into the night. It is probable that he made an escape via an adjacent St. James Place, where there was a metropolitan fire escape station. Yet the firemen on duty had seen or heard nothing during this time. Neither had the city police constable, Richard Pierce, who lived at number 3 Mitre Street Square, where his bedroom would have overlooked the murder site.
Hmm.
George Morris, the night watchman whose whistle had first alerted police to the large atrocity, expressed himself totally baffled as to how such a brutal crime could have been committed so close by without him hearing a sound. But as we talked about, with Ripper cutting the vocal cords immediately, they wouldn't have really been able to.
See, that's what I was thinking. It's just like you wouldn't hear anything because they couldn't make a sound.
Yeah.
Plus, if they were choked first, that'd be even harder. So, yeah, it probably would only sound like maybe a small scuffle at most. And if your window's closed, probably not going to hear it.
Yeah. Having murdered both Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes on the 30th of September 1888, the Whitechapel murderer fled eastward from Mitre Square and headed into the East End of London, where he left the only clue that was ever really found on Golestan Street, a short walk away from Mitre Square. He had murdered now twice in less than an hour and was well aware that the area would be flooded with police officers, each one of them intending on hunting him down and catching him. Yet, he didn't head to relative safety of streets to the west, or the north, or the south, but he stayed in the east part of the square where all the murders had taken place, or east part of the area.
Hmm.
And this is what would lead detectives to believe that he was a local and lived in the area and stayed where he felt safest, his home area.
Okay. So he murdered two people in the same night.
Yep.
Police are swarming everywhere. and he didn't appear to leave the area.
He didn't appear. And the reason why they know this is that clue that I was talking about was a bloody piece of apron from Catherine Eddowes.
Like her apron, or was like an
Her
apron
apron
from
that
that scene?
was located several streets away. That was filled with blood.
Well, that kind of goes without saying, but how
Yeah.
many, like, so, like, a couple blocks away was one of her items of clothing.
Not full item, just like a little piece.
Okay. So,
But
like,
it
just a
was
piece of her
matched.
apron. Okay.
Yep.
It's probably on the bottom of his shoe.
It could have been.
Hmm. Hmm.
And kind of the strangest thing, too, was that this man had seemed to pass several police officers on his escape, especially for not, staying in the immediate area.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, he'd almost have to.
yeah. And also, this was why people did the door to door knocks currently, because, two murders in the night, relatively same area.
Yeah. I mean, police nowadays even do that kind of stuff, so that seems about seems about right.
Yep. So, this missing segment of the apron was found by police constable Alfred Long as he patrolled along his route in Golliston Street around 2:55 in the morning. Um,
So,
and this was right outside 108 to 119 Wentworth model dwellings.
okay. So, kind of piecing together this night. So, the first murder was like around midnight?
I believe so, and then this one was around 1:45.
But the first one was in Whitechapel still.
Yep.
So he fled that scene, found himself in the square, and then another one, and then he went home, presumably.
Yep.
Hmm.
And this kind of brings me to a couple of letters that the police had received during this time. On
Okay.
October 1st, a postcard dubbed the Saucy Jack postcard was also signed by Jack the Ripper. This is just after the Dear Boss one where Jack the Ripper first got his name.
Hmm.
This letter claimed the responsibility for both Stride and Eddowes and described the killing of the two women as a double event. This
Okay.
postcard was kind of argued back and forth that it was after they announced the deaths and post. Ultimately, they found out that the postcard was more than 24 hours after the killing occurred, so that this was probably a fake.
Ah. Okay.
Yep. And then 2 weeks later, on the 16th of October, a parcel containing half a preserved kidney, accompanied by another note, was received by the chairman of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, George Lusk. This note had become known as Lusk letter or the From Hell letter because the return address by the user was from hell.
Yeah. And it had a part of a kidney?
Yep, the author of the letter had claimed to fry and eat part of the kidney.
And from the previous murders, there were some organs that were missing.
Yep, and this handwriting was significantly different than that of the Saucy Jack and Dear Boss postcard.
Hmm. I'd say, in my opinion so far, that one's the only credible one.
Yep, so with this kidney, they took it to Dr. Thomas Horrocks Opensaw at the nearby Royal London Hospital. He believed that the kidney was human in origin and from the left side of an individual from whom it had been taken.
Do you
Um,
think it was preserved and then cooked? Because then it'd be like alcohol with. I'm thinking too much culinary about this. This isn't a good idea. Uh,
yeah,
but
let me just continue on here.
weird, weird tangent. Sorry.
Yeah. Anywho, acting commissioner of the city police, Major Henry Smith, claimed in his memoirs that this kidney matched the one missing from Catherine Eddowes' body because of the length of the renal artery attached to the kidney matched the missing length from Eddowes' body, and that the forensic examination conducted upon Eddowes' body and the section of the kidney revealed both signs of Bright's disease. Smith's story is considered by some historians to be a bit dramatic recollection of the events, though.
Well, it was a dramatic time.
It was a dramatic time.
So,
Catherine Eddowes was then buried on Monday, the 8th of October, 1888, in an elm coffin in the City of London Cemetery, in an unmarked public grave, 49336, square 318. Kelley and Eddowes' sister attended. Today, the square 318 has been reused for part of the memorial gardens for cremated remains. Eddowes lies beside Garden Way in front of Memorial Bend. And in 1996, the cemetery authorities decided to formally mark Eddowes' grave with a plaque. Again, with a plaque.
Yeah. So, unmarked but numbered grave.
Yep.
And then moved, and then given a plaque.
Yep.
Huh. I'm pretty sure there was some controversy over that.
Probably, as there always is.
It is London, so there's a lot of people, and graveyards would get full. So maybe that's common there?
Yeah.
I don't know. Seems a bit off to me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
That's fine.
We could probably do an episode on, like, deaths and rituals and, like, funerals, I guess, and burying habits of, like, different cultures and whatnot, because people, like, it's very interesting.
Sort of death rituals and stuff.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with that.
But for a later date.
Yeah.
All right. Now, on to the last conical victim. So, Mary Jane Kelley is the last of the conical five. And compared to the other four conical ripper victims, Kelley's origins are kind of speculated and very undocumented, and much of the information is possibly embellished.
As it would be.
As it would be. And Kelley may herself have fabricated many details of her early life, as there's no, like, evidence to this. And according to Joseph Barnett, the man she had lived most recently prior to her murder, Kelley had told him she was born in Limerick, Ireland, in around 1863, although whether she referred to the city or country is not really known, and just that her family had moved to Wales when she was a child.
So, born in Ireland, possibly, and then moved to Wales is what people tend to think, or is just what she said?
Is what she said.
Okay.
Bennett reported that Kelley had informed him that her father was named John Kelley and that he had worked as an ironworks in either Caernarfonshire or Carmarthenshire. Barnett also recalled that Kelley had mentioned that she had 7 brothers and at least 1 sister.
Wait, at least one? Or, like, she probably left before her parents had more? Kind of thing.
All that I could find was at least 1 sister, so it was probably like a sister around her age. They could have had more. I don't really know her parents' ages or how old she was or where she was amongst the mix of the siblings.
Vague descriptions.
Vague descriptions.
Always helpful in murder cases.
Yep. I know, right? One brother named Henry had supposedly served in the 2nd Battalion Scots Guards, though. She once stated to her friend Lizzie Elbrook that a female family member was employed at the London theatrical stage. Her landlord, John McCarthy, claimed that Kelley received infrequent correspondences from Ireland, which is, like, kind of the only corroborating fact that her family was from Ireland.
She at least knew somebody from there.
Yes.
So, maybe some merit.
Maybe. So, both Barnett and the landlady said that Kelley had said that she came from a family of well to do people. McCarthy also reported Kelley being an excellent scholar and an artist of no mean degree. And around 1879, Kelley reportedly married a coal miner named Davis or Davies, who was killed 2 or 3 years later in a mine explosion.
Well, that's gotta just be unfortunate.
Yes, very unfortunate. Without any means of financial support, Kelley relocated to Cardiff, where she had lived with a cousin at the time. Although there are no contemporary records of Kelley's presence in Cardiff, it is at the stage in her life that Kelley is considered to have begun her career as a prostitute, possibly being introduced to this profession by her cousin. No South Wales police records, though, indicate Kelley was ever arrested for prostitution.
Well, it doesn't exactly mean she didn't either. But
No.
still.
Yeah. So, in 1884, Kelley apparently left Cardiff and relocated to London, where she found temporary employment as a domestic servant while lodging in Crispin Street, Spitalfields. The following year, she's also believed to have relocated to the central London district of Fitzrovia.
Of what?
Fitzrovia, Fitzrovia.
Is this still in England?
Yes, it's in London. It's a district of London.
Oh. Probably Russian England. Little Russia.
Maybe. I don't really know. I don't understand this whole districts within a city and like different parts and everything.
I'm guessing it's kind of like New York with like Queens, Harlem, Manhattan, and all that kind of like all of those essentially are just like towns within a large town type thing, like where it's too big, where it's just like that's the community. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. It is weird though, driving from street to street, and one side of the street's in one city and the next side is in a different, and then it still being highly populated building wise.
Yeah. Very confusing.
Very, very confusing. Anywho, off the little tangent, back to it. Between 1885 and 1886, Kelley is known to have lodged with Mrs. McCarthy in Breezers Hill, Radcliffe Highway. According to her landlady, she left this residence to live with the builder whom Mrs. McCarthy later stated probably would have married her. Gravitating towards the poorer East End of London, Kelley reportedly lived with a man named Morganstone near the commercial gas works in Stephanie. And later she lived with a mason's plasterer named Joseph Fleming. It is believed to be at this stage when Kelley had started drinking heavily.
Well, she's moved a lot. She's lived with a lot of different men. So.
Yep. The one that she married had died.
Yeah. She's not in a good place.
Nope.
Okay.
When drunk, Kelley would often be heard singing Irish songs, and in the States, she would often become very quarrelsome and even abusive to those people around her, which named her the nickname of Dark Mary, the third dark nickname of the bunch.
Yeah, but that doesn't exactly sound out of character for Irish people.
No. But, I mean, for all the prostitutes we have covered that have drinking heavily, that nickname does seem very common.
Yeah, but at least that one seems most natural.
Yep. McCarthy.
I only say that because we're Irish.
I know. And we live in Wisconsin.
That doesn't help.
No. McCarthy, her landlady, said she was a very quiet woman when sober, but very noisy when she was drunk.
Sounds Irish.
Yep. By 1887, Kelley resided in a common lodging house in Thrall Street, Spitalfields. Here she became acquainted with Joseph Barnett, whom she first met in April of 1887. The two agreed to live together upon their second meeting the following day. So, like, they would share a bed, pay for a room.
Relationships moving really fast there.
Yeah, well, when you're poor and, you find a trusted fellow, you gotta stick with them.
I guess.
In early 1888, Kelley and Barnett moved to 13 Miller's Court, a sparsely furnished single room in the back of 26 Dorr Street, Spitalfields. It was a single 12-foot square room with a bed and 3 tables and a chair. Kelley lost her door key, and so she would only bolt and then unbolt the door from the outside by putting her hand through a broken window besides that door.
Okay.
So, I mean, Jimmy rigging it, locking it, but everyone had access to it.
As long as you knew.
As long as you knew.
Yeah.
Barnett had worked as a fish porter in Billings State Fish Market, but when he fell out of regular employment, he tried to earn money as a market porter, and Kelley then turned to prostitution again. A quarrel ensued over Kelley sharing the room with another prostitute Barnett knew as Julia, and he left the pair on the 30th of October. Nonetheless, Barnett continued to visit Kelley on a frequent basis. I would assume as like a relationship, just he couldn't really like living with 2 prostitutes, I guess.
No, but okay. Like I can kind of see where he's coming from. It's just like, yeah, we need the money, but I can't really handle seeing this happen, so I'm gonna go. But I'll be here to help. Yeah. But I'm gonna go, type thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
In his testimony, Barnett stated that he last saw her alive between 7:30 and 7:45 the night Thursday before she was found, and that Barnett was with her for about an hour. I believe she was murdered on that Friday morning. So what he said could either be interpreted as he arrived between 7:30 and 7:45, or that he left between 7:30 and 7:45. Given he said that the last time he saw her alive and was with her for about an hour, he probably meant that he left between 7:30 and 7:45, though the interpretation is up for grabs.
Yeah, I'm more leaning the same way you are.
So whilst he was with Mary Kelley, they were visited by Lizzie Albrecht, Kelley's friend, and perhaps they had chatted a bit before they left. Mary Kelley had asked Barnett for money, but he didn't have any at the time to give her, possibly for either drinking or for rent. Who's to say?
Yeah.
Barnett did return to his lodging house on Bishopgate, where he played cards until about 12:30 a.m., which then he retired to bed. At around 4 a.m. the morning of the 9th of November, 2 neighbors claimed that they heard a faint cry of, "Oh, murder," but the cries of murder were quite regular occurrence in the neighborhood and often meant a drunken brawl was taking place or domestic violence was occurring, which was a bit more normal at the time, which is sad to say.
Yeah.
The local residents really didn't want to get involved, so they just kind of ignored it. And 2 neighbors of Mary's did hear her cry, which is very sad. And at 10:45 a.m. that morning, Mary Kelley's landlord, John McCarthy, sent his assistant, Thomas Boyer, who is also known as Harry, round to her place to collect her overdue rent. Going into Miller's Court, Boyer, he banged twice and there was no answer. No doubt believing that she was unwilling or unable to pay rent, Boyer stepped around the corner and pulled aside the curtain that covered the broken window pane. Moments later, he was ashen-faced and staggered back into McCarthy's shop and said, "Governor, I knocked on the door and couldn't make anyone answer. I looked through the window and saw a lot of blood." McCarthy said, "You didn't mean that, Harry?" And the 2 men hurried from the shop back into Miller's Court. Stooping down, McCarthy himself pushed aside the curtain and gazed into the room. And it was a really horrible sight that met his eyes. So,
like blood everywhere. I'm guessing a very mutilated corpse and whatnot. But the thing is, this is inside her home.
Yep, this is inside her home. But she was also a prostitute that could bring people back to her bed.
Yeah.
She was a bit more well off than the other ones because at least she had a room.
Yeah, but different in this way.
And so this next part is going to be kind of graphic. So maybe skip ahead 30 seconds. Besides just her corpse being mutilated like all the rest, she was also basically skinned, like alive. Or not skinned alive, but skinned and then beaten really bad.
Okay.
Where the other corpses, had just like a couple organs missing or whatnot. Hers, yeah.
Wasn't so much... Was the skin still there or was that gone?
It was peeled back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, they both basically said they hope to God they never see a site like that again. McCarthy sent his assistant to the Commercial Street police station to fetch the police, having first stopped by his shop and a couple inspectors along the way.
Okay.
So the police that answered Boyer recalled just how horrified he was in their memoirs when he came in. He was barely able to utter like a single word because the sight that he saw was just that bad.
Okay. Understandable.
These police constables, Beck and Dew, followed Boyer back to Commercial Street in the direction of Dorset Street. When they arrived on Miller's Court, Dew tried the door, but it wouldn't open. Inspector Beck, therefore, moved to the window and gazed in the room. And almost instantaneously, he kind of fell back and said, "For God's sake, Dew, just don't look." And Dew ignored him and looked through the window, and he said that sight would stay with him until his dying day.
I'm sure that at least one person threw up.
Yep.
At least one.
So Dew said, as my thoughts go back to Miller's Court, what happened there, the old nausea, indigestion, and horror just still overwhelm me every time. The one last thing I do want to say about the site was they both said that poor woman's eyes, they were just wide open and staring straight with a look of terror on her face. I didn't include any of the pictures of the crime scene, but you can check them out on jacktheripper.org.
I'd rather not, but okay.
I didn't really want to go into it, and those were more quotes
Okay.
than anything, so I can't really say how it was exactly placed.
All right.
Yep. Kelley was buried in the Roman Catholic Cemetery at Leonstone the 19th of November, 1888. And she also has like a gravestone.
Oh,
It
a
wasn't
gravestone.
It wasn't a public grave.
Okay.
With this one, it being a little later, not discovered till significantly afterward. You know, they didn't have really much to go on and all that from this particular murder scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to just kind of mention other possible Ripper victims. They just didn't have the same like MO and time frame, which is why they aren't considered canonical.
Okay.
But the other possible victims are Annie Millwood, Ada Wilson, Martha Tabram, and Alice Mackenzie. And these could also be from the gang violence, the domestic violence, and as well as other unsolved murders that happened during this time and in this area. I do want to say again that it was very poverty and crime stricken. It was very overcrowded, and crime was a regular occurrence that happened in this Whitechapel area.
Okay.
And jacktheripper.org does have a bit more on these women.
All right.
So, that brings us to, who is Jack the Ripper?
No idea.
Me either, to be completely honest. But in the early days, police really thought that this was carried on by a group of local gangs, because one of the murders that happened on this time, a woman did actually survive to tell her story and then later died from her injuries, which is why they thought the first couple were gang related. But by the time Annie Chapman was murdered on the 8th of September, the police decided that they were just looking for one murderer.
Okay.
There was a great amount of speculation that the killer demonstrated a lot of medical or anatomical knowledge. And it was debated back and forth between the different murders, if it was, you know, the same canonical, or even if it was a couple of medical students who kind of dressed the same and did it.
That'd be disturbing.
Yep. However, these kind of inquests into said medical students really didn't go anywhere. And throughout the hunt for Jack the Ripper, police remained convinced that they were looking for just one suspect who lived in that district. And that was partially because of the timeline between the two and the similar descriptions of the men.
Yeah.
Over 2,000 interviews were carried out by the Victorian police officers, with more than 300 people actually being investigated, and 80 people were being detained in police custody for these possible Jack the Ripper murders. But investigations and detentions yielded nothing concrete, and the police weren't able to really point a finger at any one suspect. So, ever since Jack the Ripper murders ended, suspect after suspect has been kind of put forward as being responsible and then eliminated, such as Prince Albert, Edward Victor, Lewis Carroll, the Freemasons, Dr. Bardno were just kind of a few of the more outlandish Jack the Ripper suspects. Others, such as like Thomas Cutbush and Carl Freeman, were put forward around the time of the murders and just discarded as likely suspects. And then they were kind of brought back into frame with modern research or like asylum records being opened to the public of these two. But I do have to say, so according to one study in the Journal of Forensic Sciences, the man known as Jack the Ripper is probably Aaron Kominski, a 23-year-old barber of Polish descent who lived in London at the time. There's this Shaw that had belonged to his family that had also belonged to Catherine Eddowes, who was murdered, September 1888. And this Shaw reportedly contained seminal fluid, which was tested by Dr. David Miller of the School of Medicine at the University of Leeds. Some researchers, though, have taken issue with Miller and Lou Halen's theory, claiming that there is no evidence on that Shaw that was ever presented at Jack the Ripper crime scenes, just that the Shaw had seminal fluid of some random guy. And mitochondrial DNA provides inconclusive evidence linking Kominski to Jack the Ripper murders, because you can't get a very specific family or specific DNA. You can get like more of a familial DNA, is from my understanding. The only thing is that this isn't the first time that Kominski's name has been floated around as a suspect. And investigators' notes from the time make reference to a Kominski and a witness who have claimed to see Kominski attacking one of the Ripper victims with a knife, though that witness had later refused to testify. So, with no evidence, police were never able to make an arrest, and Kominski died of gangrene in an institution in 1919.
What kind of institution?
I would just assume like a medical one.
Oh. Okay.
Yep. So, and there's like also not conspiracy, but like speculation that the Shaw really never belonged to Eddowes and whatnot. So it's kind of just up in the air, but the DNA...
Sort of a shot in the dark type thing?
Yeah. But that was just a study from the Journal of Forensic Science. I thought it was worth to include it.
Yeah.
Because, it did have DNA stuff, whether or not that DNA was actually present at the scene, or if the Shaw actually did belong to Eddowes, I don't really know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is Jack the Ripper. He was never caught.
Well, that's probably why he's so famous.
Just the mystery behind it. And he was seen by so many people, too. That's what I don't get. There's a lot of witnesses.
Yeah. But they were, never all exactly the same.
Nope, never all exactly the same. Similar, but just not the same.
Huh. Well, I'm pretty sure he's not still out there.
No, he would be very much dead by now.
So you can rest a little easier that way.
Yes. Several times over by now.
That's a little unsettling.
Yeah. That's why he's also probably the most notorious, never been caught, had so many people witness it, and just was able to get away with so many murders.
Yeah. Kind of chalks more up to him not being dumb. But also, yes, very much reckless.
Very much so. All right. With that, do you want to take us out, John?
Sure. If you want to hear more stuff like this, make sure to subscribe to our lovely podcast channel and give us 5 stars so more people like you can hear stuff like this. And if you want to comment or suggest anything, you can follow us on Facebook at Violent Vice Podcast, uh, as well as on Instagram for the same thing. Also, you can follow us on Twitter at Violent Vice, as well as on Patreon. You can support us at patreon.com/Violent Vice. And we'd love to hear from you. And if you support us on Patreon, we'd love it a lot because, I mean, anything helps. But we also have some special treats for you if you support us on Patreon. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. And thank you guys for listening and your support. And I want to give a special thanks to Brianna Griffith, who is our Patreon of the week.
Hooray! Well, thanks. We'll
Thank
talk to you later. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Violent Vice. Cover art is by Audi Griffith. Music by Annabelle Reback. If you want to help support the show, please visit patreon.com/violentvice or give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to. This helps us move up the charts and also helps keep the spooky stories coming. Thank you.